Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're listening to That Infernal Noise, now part of the Mental Health News Radio Network.
Devil, not no more for these, you call me Ichigo. Now I let my aura grow as I pull my Zanpakuto. Let me introduce you, his name is Angetsu. Well, he will only live if and when we let you. Been through a lot of things, killed oh so many hollows. Didn't know at first which path was the right to follow. I don't fight cause I want to win, I fight cause I have to. I will take my spirit energy and aim it right back at you. Fighting a nigga be Yakuya taught me a lot of things, like how to channel and harness all my hate and rage in the form of a bankai. I don't understand why I'm the only one fighting, all the others stand by. I'm not such a saint, I promise that I'll risk my life for strangers. Neither am I scum enough to sit back while they're in danger. Everyone looking at me like I'm a superhero, like this is the Matrix and I'm playing Neo. But I'll see my duty through. What the fuck else would I do? Just let it all rot or leave it up to Udi. You a fuck all that now, cause I'm the one in full control. That is until the hollow takes control over my soul. I'm a fucking anime kid. 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 And if you don't like it, shut the motherfucker up.
Welcome back to That Infernal Noise. I am Robert. Thank you to everybody who's been listening, sharing, subscribing, anything and everything. Like, I appreciate you guys, for real. And if this is your first time here, welcome. This is my personal diary, I guess, of my mental health journey and the things that pop into my head or whatever. It's called That Infernal Noise because that's what I call the negative in my head, the noise. Today, I want to talk about my generation. My generation, the 30-somethings, the 80s and 90s kids. We were raised by people that were ill-equipped, or let me rephrase that. The majority of us were raised by people that were ill-equipped to raise people like us. Our generation is the counterculture. You know, we were the tail end of the punks. We're the metalheads. We're the rap kids. You know, we're the last of the latchkey. Like, there was so much anger and so much angst and anxiety put into just the music that we listened to. And then that was the 80s and 90s were the boom of horror, and that was very dark. And, you know, a lot of us had problems differentiating between fantasy and reality. And we didn't know how to explain that. And the people that raised us didn't have the, I don't want to say intelligence, but they didn't have the ability to see exactly how to parent us, if that makes sense. For me, it was a little bit different because I was mainly raised by my grandparents, so they're even a generation back from what I'm talking about. So that created a bigger divide because I was an angry child. Well, okay, not child. I was an angry teen. Kid, from what I've heard, I was pretty chill. Pretty calm and been told well-spoken. I don't know. I barely remember it. But as a teenager, I started finding things that were more like me. I started finding more heavy metal. Like, I grew up on Metallica, yeah, but I started finding like real heavy shit that spoke to me, like Slipknot. Like, there was a little bit of Pantera in there, you know, listening to Slayer and Sepultura, Soulfly, stuff like that. Stuff that just really resonated with me personally. And then in middle school, I found Insane Clown Posse and Psychopathic Records, and I was a diehard Juggalo for the longest time. And I don't consider myself a Juggalo now, but that's just personal preference. I don't like pigeonholing myself and calling myself one thing or another. I don't like labels, I guess is what it boils down to. But that was our generation. Our generation was Corn, Limp Bizkit, like, fuck this, fuck that, fuck everybody type thing. And that was because the people that we were listening to were older versions of our generation. And they didn't know how to deal with it because they didn't have anybody to guide them. And that trickled down to us. If you pay attention, that trickled down to my kids' generation, the early 20-somethings, late teen kids, and even further than that with my younger two who are 11 and 9 right now. Their generation is better equipped to deal with how things are changing and the woke culture and all that stuff than we were. Because we were taught, I guess, more conservatively, to where everything's very binary, very black and white and all that stuff. Not unlike my beard. But there are a few of us, most of the people I surround myself with, luckily, that think outside the box. And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent in our generation, luckily, to where we are understanding how to parent more. We're understanding how to talk to our kids and understand them on a level that we never felt like we were understood. And I consider that progress. I consider that people being willing to step outside their comfort zone and grow and learn. And I'm not saying the generations preceding didn't, they just didn't have the same information that we do. And quite honestly, things weren't the same then. You know, everything was very binary, very black and white. And that stunted them, which in turn stunted us, which some of us started passing down to our kids, which I am 100% guilty of. I thought very close-mindedly. It was very black and white. And, well, you can identify as this because you were born this, and just dumb shit like that. And obviously, you know, you make the genetics argument, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But that's not taking into consideration the way somebody's mind works. That's not taking into consideration somebody's mental health. You know, I have 4 kids. My oldest, he's girl crazy. Well, okay, not girl crazy. He's got a steady girlfriend now, luckily. But he was very much that guy. He was like his dad and his stepdad, and we just love chicks, and chicks love us back. My oldest daughter, she hasn't really figured out what she identifies as yet. She knows she's a female, don't get me wrong, but she hasn't figured out if she likes chicks or dudes. I mean, we had a feeling from a very young age that she was going to end up being a lesbian, and that's the way it's looking, because she's more attracted to girls than guys. Okay, cool. That was somewhat prevalent in our generation. You know, the majority of chicks that I know, that I grew up with, or grew up around, or whatever, I mean, I can't think of any of them that haven't had a same-sex encounter or whatever. So I think that was progression. My Noe, and I say my Noe because biologically she is my daughter, but Noe identifies as he because she feels, or excuse me, Noe feels more like a boy than a girl. And at first I was staunchly against it. I was very, well, you're my daughter and I'm going to call you my daughter and da 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 da. And then I saw how it affected Noe. Noe cried, basically, and said that they didn't feel heard or seen. And, you hear that as far as like social media goes, but whenever it's in your house, literally in your house, and one of the people you love most in this world is going through it, it should put things into perspective for you. It should make you realize that, okay, I got my shit twisted right now. I am not educated in this whatsoever, because I was very closed-minded and, dare I say, Neanderthalic whenever it came down to it. And it took Noe to bring me out of that. Noe showed me that everybody's different. I was very against the whole snowflake culture and everybody identifying as this, that, and the third. And I still am. I don't agree with people identifying as like ponies and shit because that's a bit much. But I understand the non-binary aspect of it. I understand not feeling like what you're supposed to feel like because I've felt like that my entire life, not in that same aspect. Luckily, because I can't imagine going through that, especially as an 80s or 90s child. But in the aspect that I've never felt like I belonged anywhere. I've never felt, well, let me rephrase that. Up until recently, I hadn't felt seen or heard or like I was represented anywhere. Because as I've said before, I was too Mexican to be white and too white to be Mexican. Like, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If you act one way, I mean, you can get it from all sides. And I did get it from all sides. I used to have, I know it's not apparent now, but I used to have long black hair. I grew it out because I grew up a metalhead and I loved it. I used to, well, I still dress black t-shirts and whatnot, but I used to paint my fingernails. I painted them black because I liked it, because I identified with it, because it made sense to me. And I would get shit from the white kids. It was like, oh, you're supposed to be this. You're not a real metalhead. You're not this. You're not that. And it's just like, fucking God, this again. And it was heartbreaking in this sense, in that I just wanted to fit in. Because, I grew up around so many people that had their parents. And, like I said, I was raised by my grandparents. So I already felt out of place because of that. I never knew my dad, so I felt out of place with that. And there was just so many other things that made me feel like I didn't belong. Like I wasn't right or good enough or whatever. I figured all of this out in therapy, mind you. And it took a long time for me to realize that my kids are a reflection of me in different ways. Noe really put a microscope up to that part of me and understanding that it's okay to be different. It's okay to not fit into the binary world that everybody tries to put us in. Because I've never fit into the binary world. I mean, from a archetypal emotional sense, I've always been called the bitch. Like, dude, you act so much like a chick. Da 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 da. And admittedly, it did bother me for a very long time because, as a dude, you're supposed to be strong and the rock and all that stuff. And I pretended to be just that for a very long time. And I realized as I got older and as I started therapy and all that, that's not me. me is the strong, dependable rock and the one that people can lean on and depend on, for sure. You know, I'll give my all to the people I care about. However, there is also another side to me, which is why I always say I'm a dichotomy. And the other side of me loves hard. Like, I enjoy telling people how much I care about them. I enjoy expressing myself in this manner in just normal conversation. Just like, yo, dude, like, I really appreciate you. I'm really proud of you. I try to make it a point to say things like that more often now. Because as we get older, like, we don't know how much time we have left. And that realization hit me a couple of years ago with one of my friends passing away. Way too young. And you know, nobody in my mind fits into into the correct quote unquote boxes. Everybody has different layers to them. And if you don't, like, I don't necessarily want to associate with you because, like, why be just one thing? Why fit into one box? And that's why I stopped claiming the Juggalo stuff, and I'm a metalhead, and like all that stuff that just further separates and divides us. I'm me. That's the best way I can explain it. Like, I'm Robert. And for a long time, I didn't even want to be that. I created an alternate persona that was everything that I wasn't, if that makes sense. You know, is everything that I wanted to be. I was the cocky, arrogant, fucking ladies' man, whatever. And yeah, I never really had a problem talking to girls, but Breed was different. You know, it was something I could turn on and turn off. And it was a life that I could lead that I guess didn't feel guilt for. And all of that stemmed from being raised by people that were ill-equipped to raise me. And I'm not saying they didn't do the best they could. They absolutely did. And they gave me life lessons, which I still take. And there's still mannerisms and things that I got from my grandparents that I didn't realize until I'm sitting in the car and I'm driving like this. And it reminds me of my grandfather. Or just little things like that. But they didn't know how to raise me. You know, they were having to navigate the parent waters from the grandparent lens. And that wasn't fair to them. And I certainly didn't make it any easier on them. But generationally, I think I've pushed past most of that. I've pushed past the uncertainty of not knowing where I belong. And I think the majority of our generation has dealt with that because we all felt like that at some point. You know, we were all made to feel like that by adults that said that we weren't good enough, by teachers that said we weren't smart enough, by cops that thought we looked a certain way, so they wanted to give us a hard time because we were in a ritzier part of town or something. And from friends, people that we cared about, talking shit. And granted, some of it was just that. It was just, you know, popping shit, trying to make everybody else laugh. But a lot of it subconsciously stuck with a lot of us. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that stuff like that bothered me. And I've had conversations with my friends. I mean, like, look, dude, like, I don't care. Like, if you still want to talk shit, that's fine. But I'm not going to change who I am anymore. You know, I've had conversations with all my friends about that, where it's just like, no, I'm not going down that road. I'm not putting myself in a situation that I don't want to be in because it makes everybody else comfortable anymore. And coming from the deficit that I was working out of, to get to that point was very difficult. Very difficult, because we're told to just go with the flow. I mean, so many of our generation, not to get too heavy, but so many of our generation have been like molested and sexually assaulted. And I'm not just talking about the females of our generation, which every single female I know has got a story like that. But the more I talk to people, the more I realize that it's not just the females. It's the guys too. And we especially, I mean, women in general have to deal with it more than we do, obviously, because it happens with a greater propensity. But especially whenever it comes to stuff like that, we as guys are taught to just shrug it off. Like, it's okay. You guys are sexual creatures. It's fine, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know that that's the way to handle it. Because if somebody touched my kids, the boys or the girls, I'm losing my fucking shit. Period. And so much of our generation, even if we brought it up, like, we'd get in trouble for it. We'd get yelled at for it. Or it would just outright get ignored. Because our parents or the people who were raising us or whatever didn't know how to deal with shit like that. And it's unfortunate. Like, fortunately for our kids' generation, we have all gone through that. So we know what to look for. We know when something's off. We know whenever something's making our kids uncomfortable. And I can't speak for everybody, but whenever it comes to my kids, I encourage my kids to speak up if they get a creepy feeling from somebody. Because the times that I've gotten creepy feelings whenever I was a kid, they ended up being right. Let's just say that. And they do. And as far as I know, they haven't had to deal with things like that. And considering the close relationship I have with my kids now, I would like to think that I'd be in the know if something like that happened. So it feels like growing up like that had its benefits and its drawbacks, because it took a lot of work to get to where I am now, to where we are, my wife and I. But I'm glad, well, I guess glad's not the appropriate word, but I guess, oh, fuck it. I guess glad's the only word. I'm glad that I went through it, in the aspect that I know what to look for. I know how to parent that. I know what I needed, what I didn't get, and I know how to correct it going forward, to where hopefully, if this culture is still as fucked up as it is now, my kids will be able to parent it even better than I possibly could. And slowly but surely, things like that will get weeded out. And I know that's a heavy topic, but it goes for everything. It's like, hopefully, because I'm understanding with my children and empathetic to where they're coming from and how they identify, that whenever they go to have children, or if they adopt, or even if they just come across people in general, that they're more understanding and more accepting of people that they normally wouldn't have been otherwise. The jury's still out on Logan, because it seems like each one gets more complicated as time goes on. Because honestly, I don't think he'll give a shit. Like, just, that's another thing. But I'm happy to be in the place that I am. I'm happy to have an avenue to be able to share stuff like this. And if nothing else, it gives my kids something to look back toward if I'm gone one day, well, not if, when I'm gone one day, they can look back and they can see the type of person that their father really was. Not the hard ass that I have to be, or the disciplinarian, or the one that's constantly telling them to get ready, come on, we gotta go, da 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 da, and keeping them on track and on schedule, but the real person that I am. And the older two have gotten to see a lot more of that than my younger two, because I'm still having to actively parent them and develop them. My older two, they're fucked either way. Like they have their personalities, they have their things, and I'm there to drop little nuggets here and there as far as their relationship with me goes now. And be there for them, obviously, if they need to talk, or if I feel like I need to intervene to help them along somehow. Like with Kaylee, we had long conversations about the stress she was under last year, and I made a very hard push so she would start therapy. And now that she has, she's seen the benefits of it. So I think I did my job as a parent in that situation. And I want them to be proud of who I am. I want them to look back at me and not wince, and be like, God, Dad was such an asshole. I mean, yeah, I'm an asshole. I get that, but I don't want that to be their only memory of me. I don't want that to be how they remember me. I want them to remember, the handshakes that I have individually with all four of them. I want it to be, the times that we just went somewhere and just did something. Stupid little things that we as parents don't think matter. But I remember as a kid, those stupid little things meant the world to me. And still do. Even at 38, looking back at it, it's like, that was awesome. And I want them to have those memories. I want them to have the knowledge that while their father may be a hard cuss, that's not all there was to me. That I'm understanding, that I'm accepting, and that no matter what, they could never disappoint me. I mean, we might have to have a conversation if one of them murders somebody or something, but outside of that, it's like, I'm cool. I'm cool with whatever they want to do, however they want to identify, any of that stuff. And I know if I had gone through all that whenever I was a kid, there is no fucking way, no way that would have been acceptable to the majority of people that raised me. Or they would say it's made up, or it's a phase, or whatever. And even if it is, does it matter? Why not let them have that phase? Let them further figure themselves out and figure out what makes them tick and what is important to them and how they think, and let them develop that on their own, instead of trying to form them the way that they're supposed to be, which, what's anybody supposed to be? It's a very tumultuous time. And I know a lot of people feel like they got to walk around on eggshells and stuff like that. But if you get angry about something like that, or like, oh, that's fucking stupid, da 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 da, take the time to talk to somebody that identifies like that. If it's not in your house, talk to somebody that's outside of your house about it. Niche has a friend that identifies as male, bio female, yada yada, and he came over one night and I talked to him. It was like, I come from a place of ignorance on this. I don't know this world. What makes this happen? Not what caused it, but like, why do you think the way you do? And not in a disrespectful way, but I want to understand from a person who has gone through its perspective why that is, or what made them identify as that, so I can better understand Noe. And I try to do that with all things I don't understand. I ask people that are involved in it. I go directly to the source, because I mean, hearing secondhand or other people's interpretations of it doesn't do me any good. I want firsthand, take in your information. This is your perspective. Okay, what formed your perspective, and go from there. Instead of just jumping to conclusions and saying, this doesn't make sense to me, it's bullshit. Because I don't understand quantum mechanics, but I know it exists. I don't understand thermodynamics. I understand it exists. How is this any different? You know, it's like, I consider myself to be a fairly intelligent person, but there's a lot of shit I don't understand. There's a lot of shit I can't fathom and couldn't tell you, like, even start to explain them. So why do we think that people and the way their brains work is so binary? It's food for thought. Hopefully this episode finds you well. Want everybody to have a good day. Take the time. Talk to somebody from a different walk of life, because it could change your perspective on some things. Remember, don't let the noise make you. You make the noise.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you like the show or know somebody who would, please subscribe and share to help us grow the show. You can follow us on all socials at thatinfernalnpc. You can listen on YouTube and Podbean at That Infernal Noise, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.